Okay, so I'm Randy Charach here with Dave Sievers, and we're talking about the David Delight Pro in my case, because that's what I use. And you have several different devices. And my first question is, how many AVE sessions can someone use in a day, or would you recommend someone use in a day?
I don't recommend actually a high end. I say we have people who use it 3 or 4 sessions a day, and some people are running like people who've just had maybe recent traumas, and they're trying to prevent PTSD from forming. They will often run 80, 90 minutes 3 times a day and just keep as chill as possible until that trauma phase starts to pass.
And how long, if somebody does that, and I don't think the average person would use it 3 times a day for 80 minutes. So let's say somebody uses it a couple times a day for, one of the protocols that is around, 30, 40 minutes. Generally, how long would it take for someone to see an improvement in their relaxation or meditation practice?
Well, people use it for 2 reasons. They use it either to stimulate their cognition, or they use it to relax. Sometimes both, but those are the two main reasons why they would typically use it. When it comes to the relaxation side of it, the results are often instant. It'll knock them so clean, so far out in the chair or wherever they're using, or in their bed, and they wake up completely at peace and relaxed and grounded and not scattered, not frantic, just completely calm and gathered in together. And that'll, of course, carry on usually for the rest of their day. And so instead of being frantic and helter-skelter for the rest of the day, they're pretty calm and level. And since the brain records our experience of the day, and then it also affects our sleep, even if we have the exact same day, but we experience it in a much calmer, more relaxed way, even though it's the same stimuli in the day that someone who's frantic and stressed out and panicking and everything else would experience, the one person has a much better sleep than the other person does. Plus, they have higher serotonin levels, higher endorphin levels, and their immune system is stronger as well. Certainly, how we perceive stress, not actual stress, but how we perceive stress also takes down our immune system. Kang did some good studies on that, showing natural killer cells in people who have a generally negative disposition versus those with a positive disposition, and he did it by subtracting alpha waves from the frontal lobes, which is a depression signature. And he subtracted the left alpha waves from the right frontal area, so subtracted left from right. And if they had a negative number, not only did they experience a terrible day, but they also had an impaired immune system by about half.
So then for somebody who's looking for the similar results using your device, is that possible? And how would they do it?
Well, we have a depression protocol right on there to do that, but also the meditation protocols work very well. There's also quite a few people whose brains already run too slow, and the way to calm them down is actually by speeding them up. And basically in the brain, we've got like a brake side and a gas side. And you can have anxiety because your pedal is on the gas too much and you're just zoom, zoom, zoom way too fast. You're too frantic, you're too burnt out, you're going every which direction. And you get exhausted as a result of too much adrenaline imbalance between adrenaline, GABA, and serotonin. And you can also have the other type where you have anxiety, not because you have a lot of gas, but because you have no brakes. And this is the case of ADHD, for instance, and dementia, Alzheimer's, where the brain is running so slow that the brake guy doesn't put the brakes on. And so they also present with severe anxiety as someone with too much gas. And like ADHD is a good example of that. I mean, ADHD kids show a lot of theta brain waves instead of alpha brain waves when their eyes are closed. And that's a very slow running brain. Dementia and Alzheimer's and such do that too. Car accidents, concussions, they will show that too often. But in the case of ADHD, you give them speed in the form of Ritalin or methylphenidate, and it actually calms them down because the frontal areas of the brain especially are largely inhibitory. And so when you wake up the frontal lobes, they put on the brakes. calms the whole person down. And the SMR, or the sensory motor rhythm that's in the motor strip, kind of running across the middle of the head, that's the idling rhythm for the motor strip. And ADHD kids really show no SMR activity when they're hyperactive. But when you put them on speed and you calm them down, the SMR goes up. And so, meaning they're calmer. Anyway, so you can certainly use the audiovisual to have the same effect as putting them on Ritalin or something like that, and speed up the frontal lobes. Running an SMR beta protocol in the morning, speed up that frontal lobes, get it going, and then it has a calming effect on them throughout the day, which then they're less impulsive, they're less reactive, they're less emotional, so they experience a better day too. And so they sleep better, and they have more positive expectations of the next day, and everything spirals upward instead of crashing downward into the abyss. Plus, when they reason well too, one of the problems with kids who can't reason well, like ADHD kids in particular, is that, let's say a little Johnny acts out in class, and then the teacher scolds him. Well, he can't reason well, so now he just thinks his teacher is a meanie. So now he's feeling victimized. And then he lashes out with anger because he goes into flight or fight. So he lashes out with more anger and aggression because he's ticked at the teacher and he's feeling like he's being ostracized. Once you wake up the brain and little Johnny does something, he's going to likely do far less of something because he won't be impulsive anymore and he'll be reasoning better. But if he does misbehave and the teacher scolds him a bit, he can then reason and go, yeah, I get your point. I guess I was out of line. And he doesn't go into victim mode. He doesn't lash out. The study by Carter Russell, when they looked at victimization and aggression amongst ADHD kids in a school setting before and after entrainment, the aggression side was cut down to about 10% of what it was pre-study. Yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, well, and so I can see how it relates directly to mood and the mind, and good for relaxation and meditation. I also read somewhere that AVE is good for the heart. Can you explain that?
Well, again, stress drives up blood pressure hugely. It often causes dysrhythmia in the heart as well. And that's why there's things like heart rate variability, biofeedback. You can learn to practice to relax and so on, but you have to go further than that. It's good to know how to relax your heart and how to go into a sort of a state of meditation and calm and keep things more grounded and in balance. But at the same time, it's good if you can stop yourself from reacting and being all stressed out in the first place. Then you don't go into flight or fight in the first place. But yeah, there have been cardiologists who've used the gear rather than severe meds or blood pressure meds or other heart stabilizing meds or surgery or things like this. And they've had some pretty good results just by keeping a person calm. When a person is calmer and they're seeing the benefits of that, they also get usually on board cognitively. And as a result of that, they will start to learn to self-regulate just because their awareness is up. People in flight or fight have no awareness, generally speaking, of what's going on. They're always reactive, and everybody else is doing it to them. Life is doing it to them. Politics are doing it to them. Everything is doing it to them, and they're not proactive. They're just always reactive. And they have to get calmed down first so they can start to see their role in how they experience life, universe, and everything. Before they can start getting proactive. So you got to get them out of that crazy mode and just get them grounded so they can start to participate in their own emotional experience of the world and life and what's going on in it.
Okay, cool. And if someone is looking to get heart benefits from the device, there's no specific heart protocol, but what it sounds like you're saying is it's about relaxing the nervous system and calming the mind. So it has like a secondary benefit of being good for the heart. Is that correct?
That's correct. Anything that helps the mind be calm is good for the heart and your digestive system and your immune system and everything.
Right. Yep. Okay. With the way of the world today is, with the pandemic and the wars and all of these things going on, life is complicated. more
Yes,
so than ever in my lifetime that I've noticed. And a lot of people that I know, and including myself, not immune to it at all, is, there's a lot of uh, worry about personal things, worry about the state of the world, worry about, the people's
sure.
family. How can AVE help with that, with the worrying part of it, the rumination?
Well, there's a lot of things going on in the world, but do we have to worry about it? That's the first question. Do we have to worry? It's one thing to be concerned, but worry is just misplaced energy. It goes nowheres. If you worry and you can't take action, what's the point of it? You're just activating your flight or fight response and burning yourself out. But there was a study that was published, however. We've got a few studies on worry and that type of a thing, but one of them that was done by Michael Telch's group at the U of T in Austin. They looked at college students, because college students often are worrying about their grades, their socialization, their grades, their everything. They're just pushed so hard, they're worrying about everything in school.
Mhm.
And as a result, it actually impairs their grades. And so he looked at entrainment on our devices versus a worry exposure group versus another group that made notes, a worry desensitization group and a control group. And those who used entrainment had the best results in terms of reducing worry, but also because it's so easy to use entrainment as compared with the worry exposure and the worry desensitization groups. They had a high dropouts because it was just difficult, and they didn't feel the benefits versus the effort. Whereas the entrainment had the fewest dropouts and the best compliance because it was easy and it was more effective.
So is that, again, going back to relaxing the mind and the nervous system to be able to have a more solid grasp on your thoughts? Because, I mean, from an intellectual level, I think people understand that worrying doesn't help anything. And then it seems something that is out of their control. So is it again similar to the heart, to calm the mind and have a healthier balance in your life when it comes to physical and mental health? Is it all about relaxing and using mostly those protocols on the device, or are there other specific ones that you would recommend for a couple of these things that I've brought up?
Well, it's about both relaxing and stimulating at the same time in a way. When you go into worry, as it becomes chronic, the brain, in the sort of acute stages, the brain is running hot, and you're hyper vigilant. You're very aware of things. You're over aroused mentally and physically. But over time, as it becomes chronic, you start to burn out. You still have the worry though, and so over time, you end up with a person that is both quite exhausted mentally and physically, and yet they're still over vigilant, kind of like the ADHD child now. And worry shuts down cerebral blood flow in the frontal lobes, just as it does with ADHD, and as you see with concussions and dementia as well. And then your inhibitions go, you can't regulate, you can't reason, and you just, everything goes wild. And then as a result, your day is worse. And so then you reflect on having a worse day and how your life is going to hell in a handbasket. And then that adds more to the worry. So it becomes chronic. We will typically then go to sort of a two-stage approach, and they will probably run the mood boosting protocol in the morning to help get more positive thoughts in their head, and relaxation, like a meditation protocol in the afternoon, to try and calm themselves down, to keep the day more level. But there's a point, where where it exhausts them, and they actually have to be stimulated, even though it's stimulation caused the problem. They need to be stimulated to calm back down again.
Right. Well, that's an excellent point. That's something for me anyway that I've learned today. I would always just default to the meditation to relax, but now I get it. It's counterintuitive, but it makes sense the way you've explained it. So I hope other people have benefited from our little chat today. I know you have to go. I always love speaking with you. And anything else you want to to finish off with as far as the device, or how most people can get the best benefit from it?
Well, I think one of the things, when I got into entrainment, of course, in those days, people really only understood the hypnotic side to it. And so the person I developed it for was an instructor in performing arts. And he was using it in a hypnosis way to help his students overcome stage fright. And that's when I got on board with it. And then I started using it on our TMJ patients. So patients, that's temporomandibular dysfunction. And so there all of those people with jaw pain and stuff like this. And at the time, I just wrapped up a study with the U of A here in dentistry showing that almost all of our patients were housewives of oil workers. And in Alberta, of course, oil's a big deal. And in the 80s, oil was like $15 a barrel. Wage rollbacks, job layoffs, and all those factors were playing out, combined with 18% interest rates on mortgages back in those days. Almost all of them showed an increase in arguments with spouse and financial worries 3 to 6 months prior to having jaw pain. So it just goes to show how it could eat at you and slowly destroy things in a person's life. So we put them on entrainment, and we had some people who had like never-ending pain for 10 years. And in the roughly 10 minutes, they were pain-free because their muscles relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we had to turn off the chatter in their head, the flight or fight system, and let their muscles finally relax. And they were pain-free for a couple of days. But they not only were they pain-free for a couple of days, but they started to connect the dots on how they contributed to their own illness. And as a result of that, they started climbing upwards instead of spiraling downwards. And so we ended up having a very successful study. And that's when it really made sense to me about the power of entrainment. It wasn't just a hypnosis device or a new age gimmick, but it had some real clinical application. And then after that, we started doing more research. I spent hundreds of hours in the health sciences library, finding thousands of studies on entrainment, but almost all of them were physiological. Very few of them were behavioral or clinical in that regard. They're almost all stimulus in and evoke potentials out of the brain or something to that effect. But I did find enough clinical studies on meditation, on some other things, to start writing a book on it. And then Harold Russell and Carter, they did an ADHD study in 1992, I believe is when they published it, showing that you could use it in a stimulation fashion, because up to that point, we were always using it in a relaxation fashion, like with alpha waves and such. That was the big deal back in the 80s, was all about alpha waves. Well, they showed you could stimulate the brain and improve ADHD behavior and grade point average and IQ and all of that remarkably well, way better actually than you could with drugs. And it also held. Now, so that was the first study to show the stimulating effects of entrainment. And then from there, it just started taking off, study here, study there, study everywhere. We've done over 25 studies on our gear alone. We've done more studies, actually, I think, than the entire world on entrainment. And we have discovered all kinds of other things, such as massaging the waves so they're not so aggressive. It has a better effect on driving the brain waves. We've learned that if you randomize them mildly, which we call RAVE, randomized audio-visual entrainment, it improves the effects quite a bit better. And I've been doing that research for 20 years and finally got a patent on it just a couple of months ago.
Okay.
After 20 years of collecting data for everything from meditation to dementia to concussions to ADHD, grade point average in students, and all of it. It's been a lot of work. So anyway, that's where the technology is slowly heading. For me, what's interesting about entrainment is, you can use it to alter frequencies, but it also drives up cerebral blood flow.
Mm-hmm.
It also drives up neurotransmitters such as serotonin and endorphins. It also drives up heat shock protein, which is very important for brain function. drives up non-inflammatory cytokines. It's been shown to activate glia to eat up plaques in the brain. It, of course, has a profound relaxation effect by shutting down the HPA axis. That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is the flight or fight axis. And it's profound on how it shuts that down. Just nothing is faster. So when I got into entrainment back in the 80s, I wasn't really sure if it was a new age kind of gimmick or what, but over the decades, this has been a life mission now.
Yeah.
And over the decades, I have discovered that indeed it's probably one of the most powerful technologies I've ever had the privilege of experiencing. And I have certainly used it on myself enough times, like hundreds and hundreds of times over the years, dealing with stress or dealing with cognitive issues or other things. And we just get, over our lifetimes, we've just had thousands of people who gave up on everything. They gave up on medicine, they gave up on psychology, they gave up on everything. And entrainment was the only thing that saved them and helped them get back on track. And then once you get back on track, of course, you can use it as a good starting point now to start engaging in other things. But you got to get that whole brain handled in a global sense first and get it settled down, get it stabilized, whether you're relaxing it or stimulating it, you have to get it functioning so a person can manage their life again. And this is one of the things too, is that, when we, like you were mentioning about all the stress that's going on in the world, politics, wars, this, that, pollution, global warming and everything, viruses and everything else, we can get by not too badly in a heightened state of arousal from flight or fight by external forces, even though it's not the best way to function. But once we start to fall apart internally and we can no longer trust ourselves. So it's one thing if we don't trust our environment, and we might still be able to survive with that, not too badly, but as it wears and tears on us to the point where we no longer can trust ourselves because we start falling apart, then we come undone really fast because we no longer have the stability from within. And we can't hide from our own mind. Our brain knows what's going on with our mind, and our mind knows what's going on with our brain, and we can't hide from it. And that's the biggest thing I see is people who they've lost their ability to trust themselves and rely on themselves like they used to in years past. And that scares the dickens out of them. And then they really come undone hard. And so we've got to get them stable again so they can start to trust themselves, be able to rely on themselves, get grounded, and then manage the world around them. And entrainment does that very well.
Right. Well, it's a great alternative to medication, that's for sure. It sounds like there's a lot of things that you mentioned today that people would the default would be take a pill. And in some cases that's necessary, but it seems like in many cases can be avoided using entrainment, which is a wonderful thing. So keep up the good work. Congratulations on your patent and your continued endeavors in this. And thank you so much for helping me and so many other people with what you've created.
Thank you very much, Randy. It's a privilege to be interviewed by you. I thank you. And I wish you the very best and the life ahead of you.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.